And we can start now. This is the second webinar of the 4-part webinar series that we are conducting on the BRSR. We are calling this series Tuesdays for Transition, as the webinars have been and are being conducted on 4 Tuesdays. We have 2 more webinars to go. The next one is on the 5th of December. Transition, we are calling it Transition solutions. We help companies improve on their maturity of BRSR reporting, conduct BRSR analysis, and gap assessments based on reports submitted by companies. I would like to brief you about today's topic and introduce our speaker for the day. So these are the 4 topics we will be talking about. The first one, which has already been covered in the last webinar on last Tuesday. Approach in a 360 method of BRSR, and we have tried to include everything regarding it. We are going to have speakers from XBRL and the assurance backgrounds as well, so you can expect insightful information from our experts in the upcoming webinars. For those of you who attended the last session, you would already know that we spoke about how to achieve clarity and consistency in BRSR reporting. The topic for the day is benchmarking BRSR reports, BRSR disclosure against global best practices. Going to speak about reporting principles, about the relevance of IR principles with the BRSR format, and how that can help companies report better. Our speaker for the day is Ms. Manisha Joshi. She's an environmental engineer. Experience in environmental consulting includes conducting environmental and EHS audits and due diligence. She's currently working on BRSR disclosures and in AtQuest and has led some of the BRSR analysis work here. Lastly, before we begin with the webinar, just to give you a little bit of structure, Manisha will speak on the topic of today for the next 30 minutes, which will then be followed by 10 minutes of Q&A, question and answer session. The last 15 minutes would be an exclusive quest where we will show you the gap assessment service that we are providing only to our customers. We will be taking questions only via chat, so you can type up and send in the questions on chat as and when you feel the need to do so. And in case of time constraints, if we miss out on any of the questions, we will email you their answers. Please drop in your email addresses on chat so that we can get back to you with the answers, whichever ones we've missed out. And now I will request Manisha to take over the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stuti. And thank you everyone for making time on your busy Tuesday afternoons to attend this webinar on the BRSR and the IR. We hope this is something that you will find useful. Let me just share my screen, pull up my presentation. And in the interest of conserving bandwidth, I will just be stopping my video. I hope that's okay with everybody. So the topic for today is benchmarking the BRSR reports against the global best practices that Stuti was mentioning earlier. Let's dive right in. So when we're talking about the global sustainability reporting standards or frameworks, the best practices, right, that we're talking about, a number of names come to mind, like CDP, SASB, integrated reporting, TCFD, GRI, all of these. And there is a reason why we have chosen the integrated reporting principles as the global best reporting standard for baselining our reports. And the reason is that, these standards have been in existence for probably a couple of decades, some of them, I mean to say. The integrated reporting principles were, I think they came out in 2010 with their, framework. However, they have consolidated with the SASB. The past few years has seen a lot of consolidation and merging of different boards and standards. And we see that the CDP, which established the Climate Disclosure Standards Board, has also consolidated with the Value Reporting Foundation into the ISSB. The ISSB is the International Sustainability Standards Board. It's in existence under the umbrella of the IFRS, which is the International Financial Reporting Standards. And recently, the TCFD also has merged into the ISSB. So it looks like the ISSB is fast becoming the global baseline for sustainability reporting. In fact, the ISSB has also signed certain agreements with the GRI, basis which it is taking a lot of inputs in order to make its reporting standards as the single reference point for companies that want to do sustainability reporting. So you can see here that the ISSB is what is, everything's boiling down or consolidating into that. And I'd like to point out that the chair of the ISSB, that's Emmanuel Faber, has mentioned that we are convinced that the integrated reporting framework drives high quality reporting and connectivity between financial and sustainability related financial disclosures, which improves the quality of information provided to investors. And therefore, we have taken these integrated reporting principles as the ones that we should, consider as the gold standard when we are studying our reporting and how we can make it as mature as possible. Another reason why we have considered the IR principles is also there is this belief that applying the IR principles while drafting the BRSR will significantly improve your company's chances to get through third-party assurance. This is from several BRSR assurance providers. So this is like, the silver bullet that will ensure that your BRSR will be, as mature as possible, and it will get through your third-party assurance audit, quickly. And why am I mentioning that again? I'm just, referring to the slide which Anveshi had presented last week, which talks about the third-party assurance requirements timeline, which the SEBI had published in July this year, which mandates that from this financial year onwards, the top 150 companies have to get their BRSR third-party assured. Next year, it's going to be 250. The year after is 500, and financial year 26-27 onwards, the top 1,000 companies have to do third-party reasonable assurance. So again, coming back to this, the IR principles will really help your company to get through the reasonable assurance audit. And that's one of the reasons why we're studying this. Okay, so we'll just get into the 7 IR principles. And before we start off, it can be a little confusing because principles are also present in the BRSR as the NGRBC principles 1 through 9. However, for these integrated reporting principles, we will name them principles A through G. Strategic focus and future orientation, connectivity of information, stakeholder relationships, materiality, conciseness, reliability and completeness, and the 7th being consistency and comparability. So we'll look at each of these principles and how they apply to the BRSR now. So the principle A, which is on strategic focus and future orientation, is just talking about your company's strategic outlook with regard to business, your company's strategic outlook with regard to sustainability, the connection between the two, your company's strategy in creating value in the short, medium, and the long term. Basically, the report, the sustainability report that you publish should express this. Basically, this aspect of your company should come out through the sustainability report. There is also the mention of use of capitals, which is related to the value creation framework, which talks about these 6 different capitals, which is, if those who are familiar with the integrated report of companies, they would know this. There are 6 different capitals, which are the financial, manufactured, intellectual, human, social and relational, and the natural capitals. These are the ones that are input into the company, and the company, through its operations, through its processes, transforms them into 6 different capitals of these same nature. And in this process, value is either created, preserved, or eroded. That is the whole framework of the integrated reporting and the value creation framework. Okay, so the strategic focus and future orientations should come out in our report, and how these capitals are being utilized. And understanding the relationship between the past and the present operations, and understanding the future goals of the company, so that you understand its direction, its future orientations. Okay, so we'll just look through a few of the examples of how this is done. Okay, so these are examples taken from BRSR reports that were published in the past cycle, that is financial year 22-23. This is taken from a bunch of reports. No one particular report can be really called out. And yeah, so this pertains to a question in section A, where they're talking about policies. And there is a question saying, do the enlisted policies extend to your value chain partners? Now, this company has mentioned a no for all the principles. So, our advice in such a situation would be that we can understand, right? That, a company that's just started on its sustainability journey cannot possibly have created all its policies, and then extending it to the value chain partners may seem really intimidating. However, to make your reporting more mature, you can probably add a note at the bottom of this table, which explains your company's strategic view on how you intend to get this done, how you intend to start on this path. So that's something that deals with strategic focus, which would give clarity to any reader of this report. Another example is the future orientation. There is a question which talks about, does the entity have procedures in place for sustainable sourcing? Answer is no. So again, understandable, what is the right now, supply chain, sustainable supply chain probably is something that takes some more effort to get set up. But if it's a simple thing as adding an extra note, which would tell, what are your thoughts, what are the company's management thoughts on getting into sustainable sourcing, and that would help any stakeholder really get a lot more comfort when they're reading your sustainability report. So moving on to the second principle, which is about connectivity of information. It's talking about providing qualitative and quantitative information about the organization together. Several times that happens. This has to be done in a way which is easy for a reader to understand and connect to. We also note that the BRSR asks some questions which are connected with each other. So you want to make sure that, like, for example, we're saying ensure that information from all sources is interpreted in a holistic manner. What does that mean? You might be getting information from different departments of your company to put together an ESG report, right? It won't be just from one department. However, there will be some overlap of information, and if you're using information from different sources and they're not connecting up, that could be an issue for a reader who's reading the report at the very end and not being able to see the, coherence between the different answers. So you want to make sure that all the information in your BRSR report is connected up. And we mentioned it should be logically structured and presented consistently. Here again, we're providing some examples of some reports that we have seen. Going back to the example, does the entity have procedures in place for sustainable sourcing? Yes or no? If yes, what percentage of inputs were sourced sustainably? This company has answered yes. We are practicing sustainable procurement in line with the sustainable procurement policy, covering all suppliers, vendors, input material. It also mentions aspects of ethics, integrity, human rights, health, safety, all of this. However, the next part of this question, what is the percentage of inputs sourced sustainably, is not answered in this BRSR report. So you want to be able to, provide this information. If you do not have this information, then, add a note saying when is it that you're going to probably have this ready? What is it that you're working on to get this ready? We also checked for the XML report of this company for this year. And we noticed that this XML report also was not, published. So, this is something probably we do a check between the PDF as well as the XML just to make sure if we're getting everything right. Then moving on to the other example that we had, this company was mentioning the participation, inclusion, and representation of women, which is in section A of the BRSR, mentioned a total of 8 board of directors, of whom 2 were females, and 4 and 1 for KMPs. And in another part of the report, I think principle 5 of section C, when there was more details asked for, we see that the number of male board of directors was 2 and the number of females was 1. So we see here that within the same report, there are some, disconnects. So this is something that you want to be very careful of when you are preparing your BRSR report. I'll move on to the third principle, which is stakeholder relations. Again, this is very key. You want to identify, engage, and communicate with your company's stakeholders for quality relationships. Any stakeholder who's going through their sustainability report, they would be able to understand how well they're being engaged, and the report would, should communicate all the details of how all the other stakeholders are also engaged by the company. You want to ensure that all reasonable stakeholder expectations are met, and this comes through in your reporting as well. And this also, we want to make sure that the organization is responsibly utilizing the capitals that we had mentioned, the 6 different capitals that we had mentioned earlier. So some examples where we can see how stakeholder relationships is coming out through the BRSR report. This is a question in section B, I believe. We're talking about complaints, grievances on any of the principles under the NGRBCs. And we see that for communities, there is no grievance redressal mechanism. Neither is it present for the value chain partners. It is present for customers, employees, shareholders, and investors. So this is something that, probably if you don't have it immediately available, again, putting a note which, talks about when you're going to have this mechanism available. Of course, the SEBI and its BRSR format, it's a way for them to nudge all the top 1,000 companies to have this sort of, mechanisms available. This is the sustainable business, right? So these are the ways to, make your business more sustainable and better. Another example that we see is to human rights. I think principle 5 requirements form part of your business agreements and contracts, and there is a no mentioned over here. So again, the value chain partners are, again, they are key stakeholders and they are brought into the BRSR, and in this manner, the impact is being increased. The sustainability impact of, doing business, of having the BRSR is starting at the top 1,000 companies, but it's also trickling down into the value chain partners. And in all of these mechanisms, it's very evident. Okay, so the next principle is materiality. What is the meaning of materiality is basically what is important to a company, what is material to a company, or what is important, what is significant, or what is a priority to your organization. And there is some interconnectedness between this principle and the previous principle, which was the stakeholder relationships, because if you want to know what is material to your organization, you should be able, you will only find this out when you engage with all your key stakeholders in the right manner. So that is what we consider as the materiality assessment. When you do the materiality assessment, then you're able to identify the risks, the opportunities, the outcomes. You're able to prioritize matters. You're able to prioritize what actions need to be taken, what would be the most beneficial to the most number of stakeholders, and thereby you're also able to report accordingly. So you would determine the information to disclose because on the basis of materiality, what is important for you. So some examples where we see the materiality of the company. There's one question in principle 2. Has the entity conducted LCA for any of its products for manufacturing industry or for its services, for service industry? If yes, provide the details. So the answer here is, since the organization is operating in the financial services with minimal potential environmental or social impact, this is not applicable. So we would probably, let you know that there is something called financed emissions as well. So there is, LCAs that are happening for even service sectors. There are LCAs happening even in the software industries for the software code which is being developed. So, do stay current, stay informed of how LCA is applicable to your industry and your sector, because it can be performed on most of these manufacturing and service sectors. So it's best to be well informed and to be, ahead of the game to know what's happening. Then there is a question here which talks about percent of input materials sourced from suppliers who are MSMEs or small producers, or sourced directly from within the district or neighboring districts, meaning local, right? So this company has answered saying not applicable. So we understand that the top 1,000 companies are the real big companies. However, percentage of input material doesn't only have to be physical material. It could also refer to services. And there are plenty of MSMEs and small producers and local vendors that are applicable to all companies. It could be something like, facility management. It could be something like office supplies. It could be IT support. It could be infrastructure maintenance or food vendors that you would use. It could be learning and training providers. All of these could be MSMEs. They don't necessarily have to be, huge multinationals. And probably a lot of you are already engaging them, and probably you haven't found a way to keep track. But this is probably a good idea to just make a note over here and say that we are doing it. However, we are not keeping track of it. But we are going to, set systems in place so that we can keep a track of it, because this is the direction of sustainable business. So this is something that we can all take note of and try to implement going forward. Okay, so moving on to conciseness, this principle is talking about limiting the repetition by following logical structure, cross-referencing. You don't want to confuse or mislead somebody by going overboard and stating too much. Sometimes when you state too much also, you might, contradict yourself. That has happened, and that would end up confusing the reader. We would advise that you use plain language that any kind of a stakeholder who's reading your report would be able to understand, to avoid using jargon which is specific to your industry or some technical terminologies. And conciseness will apply not just to your descriptive answers, it can also apply to your quantitative answers. Please make sure you're using the appropriate units which is specified in the BRSR format. Please make sure if you're not using that particular unit, you explain the conversion, or you make sure that you have used it across the entire report so it's easy for the reader. Also, you should make sure that you're addressing the main point of the question. So all of these come under the umbrella of being concise. Couple of examples over here. We talk about assessments for the year. Percentage of your plants and offices that were assessed by entity or statutory authorities or third parties for like child labor or forced involuntary labor and all that. The answer given is the company is in compliance with the laws as applicable. So this is not answering this question which is asked. Neither is it in the units that it's being asked. So now please ensure that the answers that you're providing are to the point, answering the main question. Then, this is another example where return to work and retention rate of permanent employees and workers that took parental leave. There is a mention here saying 100% for both female and male employees return to work. And then there is further information here where there is return to work rate 24, 4, 0, and 28. Again, like we mentioned, this is again trying to, we were not able to understand over here what is the rate. Over here they mentioned 100%, over here it is mentioned as 24 and 4. So we can only assume the best case scenario that it was 24 males and 4 females who had taken parental leave and 100% of them have returned. However, we would suggest that instead of this, you mention it as 100%, 100%, and 100%, rather than going overboard and potentially confusing a reader of your report. Okay, so moving on, we have the principle of reliability and completeness. Reliability means that if anybody asks you a question like, how did you get this number? It should be reliable. You should be able to maintain an audit trail. You should have systems in place which records the details which are used for coming up with this, maybe it might be a quantitative number, it might be a descriptive answer of some of the, work that you have done or operations, but you need to maintain an audit trail, make sure that you have all the sufficient documentation. There are times when you might be making estimations. Like, for example, we've seen reports where a company will say, we have electricity bills for, say, 80% of our offices. Some of it is shared space and we don't get the bills for that. And so we are extrapolating and coming up with this sort of a number. So that is fine. That is good because, you're clearly, communicating what is an approximation. You're clearly telling what is the estimate, and the reader will be able to understand, okay, this might be the margin of error in this answer. So the limitations are known. Then you might want to explain the extent of information disclosed for understanding of completeness. Like, for example, you're working on sustainable sourcing, but you're only doing it for partial of your inputs or partial of your services. You might want to explain what it is you're doing and what you're not doing. So the reader will have a complete picture of what it is that you're talking about. And actually, this lends a lot of credibility to your report. Your stakeholders who are reading it, they might be investors looking to invest in the company. They might be customers looking to buy from the company, or whoever it may be. They will feel a lot more like this is, real. This is, truthfully represented. It's complete. It makes it more credible for them. So some examples that we have provide details of any corrective action taken or underway to address safety-related incidents and on significant risks concerns arising from assessments of health and safety practices and working conditions. The answer is, as part of our assessments, we have recognized the importance of a robust organizational EHS framework to boost the health and safety practices within the organization. So, I mean, we totally understand that, having a robust EHS framework is critical to, ensure safe and health and safety practices. However, this answer is not really addressing the question, which is talking about what is the corrective action which has been taken. So the reader may have to guess, was a new EHS framework introduced, or is it that they're going to introduce one this year, or is it that there were tweaks which were made? So that, it's not a complete answer. And similarly, this is an example for reliability. So details of business activities is sought. This is in section A, accounting for 90% of the turnover. And we see here in this table, there is a mention of financial and insurance service that accounts for 83.13%. And in the very next table, which is asking for further details about this, with the NIC code and all that, this percentage has come down to 16.87%. So when a reader is reading this, they would really wonder, how reliable is this information? What exactly was, being told, or something is missing over here? Was there some data entry error or something like that? So this is something that you want to take care of in terms of reliability of the data. Okay, the next, we're talking about consistency and comparability. This is, you want to make sure that you're having the same reporting policies that are followed consistently through the report. You want to make sure that the same KPIs are used throughout the report. You don't change the units in one place from the other. Present information to assist comparisons and benchmarking. So there are several places where you see previous financial year, current financial year. Stakeholders may also want to benchmark your company against a different company. So you provide all the information that you are giving in your report in a comparable way, in a consistent way, without any contradictions. So that's what this principle is about. There is definitely overlap between the principles, but each of them have a specific, focus of these principles. So for example, we're talking about consistency and comparability, details of assessment of value chain partners. Here we see that it was nil. And the next question is talking about provide details of any corrective action taken or underway to address significant risks arising from the assessment, right? So that's pertaining to the previous question. And the answer is the organization works towards greater integration of health and safety practices throughout its value chain. At present, no significant risks have been identified, and hence no corrective actions have been taken. So again, you would wonder, this answer is inconsistent with this because risks have not been identified where assessments were not taken. So you would want to stay consistent with your particular answer, stay consistent to that and explain it further. That would be a better approach. This example is talking about details of retirement benefits. Here, so this is an example of comparisons. Current financial year is answered. And then we see in the previous financial year, the number of employees covered as a percentage of total employees is marked with a Y or NA, which cannot be compared with, these numbers. So you want to answer it in the same format so that, it's easy for anybody to compare. So finally, I would like to, summarize this and mention that probably, if you want to take away 5 tips on how to align with the IR principles, you want to keep connections in mind. So like I mentioned previously, there are several questions that are interconnected. So make sure that the answers to one question will also be in tandem. It can be read in tandem with another connected question. Like we had mentioned about, intensity numbers are all available. So you would want to make sure that the calculation of it is correct. Any stakeholder might want to calculate it. It's within the same report. And also, please keep in mind that there are, associated documents in the public domain, like the annual report or the integrated report or a sustainability report from your own organization for that same year. You want to make sure that the information is connected between the BRSR and those other reports as well. So we had mentioned about the consumer complaints, about how, there is a question in Principle 9 which asks for a breakdown of the consumer complaints. And in section A, there is a, what is the total number of consumer complaints? So these all have to, tie together, and they all should flow and make sense to the reader. Secondly, make sure you have your audit trail. This takes care of the reliability aspect. And of course, this is like critical for any third-party assurance that we have mentioned. Basically, I mean, this is for the quantitative, I would say. However, keeping in mind all of these principles while you're drafting the BRSR is critical to make sure that you get through the third-party assurance in a very smooth manner. Add cross references. That's a great way, because the SEBI has given this freedom or this liberty to Indian companies, that you may not want to elaborate everything in the BRSR, because many companies have already published their integrated report or they're publishing sustainability reports. So you can easily cross reference certain sections of the BRSR with these other public documents. And a stakeholder, any reader, would be able to gather more data, would be able to, get a feeling of, their answer was complete. Please make sure you use the correct units. It's always helpful to answer the question in the unit specified in the BRSR question. Also, just to, let you know, give you a heads up about the next session as well. It's connecting with the next session. We are answering the BRSR in both the PDF as well as the XBRL format. And all of these answers that we provide are analyzed. The analytics is done on the answers from the XBRL format especially. So if you use different units, it becomes very difficult for the analysis to be performed. And, there might be red flags which are raised, which might be totally unnecessary for your question. So, and even if you do have to use a different unit, please keep it consistent across the report and across the years so that it is easily comparable. However, I would really urge you to try and, as far as possible, to use the same units which are specified in the BRSR question, just so that even from the analytics, the XBRL point of view, it becomes as smooth as possible for you as well. And lastly, this is something that I've mentioned several times in this past few minutes of this webinar. Please add notes. It really, really helps. Add notes whenever, if suppose you feel like some BRSR question is not, we have not been able to do everything that we want to do and answer this question properly. You can, talk about what is the current status, but add a note about the future plans of how and when your company would address and reach these goals. So the notes really help, and the reader will feel a sense of comfort and will feel a sense of, yes, I understand what's happening here. And also, we had noticed during our analyses of several BRSR reports that there are many times not applicable is given as the answer to a question without any further explanation. So, please bear in mind that a reader of your report may not understand your company as well as you do. So if you provide another note, another sentence explaining why it is not applicable to you, it would go a long way in helping the reader to understand. And with that, we come to the end of this webinar. So
Yeah. Thank you so much, Manisha. We are going to take questions now, so everyone can drop in their questions on the chat, and Manisha, I will ask them to you one after the other. So the first question is from Dr. Kiran. If an organization recognizes some new or additional KPIs in the second reporting cycle, how can this issue be addressed as additional data will have to be input into the mandate?
So, if these additional KPIs are already part of the BRSR format, then definitely this has to, be incorporated in the format. However, if it is something additional, you might want to, if it's not required within the BRSR, format or its BRSR KPIs, it may be something that you want to include in a sustainability report.
Right. Thank you, Manisha. The next question is by Sushmita. The question on sourcing, it's a question on sourcing material inputs from local MSMEs. Can its response include sourcing of services from local vendors? Example, housekeeping.
Yes,
Essentially, does the
absolutely.
question, sorry, please go on.
Uh,
The,
Suti,
the
you can
question
complete
isn't
the question.
complete yet. Yeah.
Yeah, please complete.
Essentially, does the question relate to goods on only or goods and services?
So this question, we have also looked up the guidance as well. It's not stating that it's only for goods. So when we have had discussions with other companies, we have also come to understand that this includes goods and services. So that is why when I had given examples also, I mentioned, facilities management, I mentioned learning and training providers, I mentioned, infrastructure maintenance, all of these services also are included.
Okay, thank you, Manisha. The next question is by Naveen. Can the IR principles be applied to BRSR report or any other ESG report too?
Yes, in fact, Naveen, that is exactly what we have done in AtQuest. We have applied the BRSR principles, the IR principles to the BRSR. We have come up with more than 600 touch points, in fact. We have mapped the IR principles to each and every BRSR question. So that basically, in a few minutes, I will also be showing you a little bit more in depth about how we have done that and the output that we have generated from this. So you can basically, get an idea of how well you're faring, how well is your BRSR report aligned to the integrated reporting principles by using this tool that we have developed. And of course, this IR principles, they are actually meant to be used globally. And we are talking about BRSR sitting in India, but it is being used for a lot of ESG reporting.
Okay, thanks, Manisha. So in one of our slides, we have spoken about the retention rate of the employees, right? And Mehul has pointed out that retention rate asks for number of employees by gender and rate, the percent. So the example that we have shown seems to be correctly entered.
Okay, so I think the retention rate was not an issue. We were talking about the return to work rate, which was asking for a rate, whereas the numbers provided were like so many employees.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Manisha.
Go back and
Yeah, we can
well.
check that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Anmeshi has also.
So the return to work rate over here, let me just go back to slide. So the retention rate was, fine. But we're talking about the return to work rate, which is talking about 24 and 4. Whereas over here, 100% is mentioned. So that's the inconsistency that we would see between the two numbers.
Okay, okay, Manisha. I think that's clear. So I think with this, we still have a couple of questions to go, but because of the time constraint, like I said, we will email the answers to all of you all who joined today for the remaining questions, and we can go ahead with the last part.
Okay, thanks, Stuti.
Thank you.
So for the last part, yeah, and if anybody does have any other questions, you can please use the scanner as well and get in touch with us. For the last part, I think Naveen had asked this question about can the IR principles be used for the BRSR, and that is exactly what we have done. We have come up with this research guide, which is called BRSR Done Right. So when we are preparing the BRSR for our customers, we believe in not just preparing it, but we prepare it in the right manner. That is, we apply the IR principles, the IR thinking while we are preparing the BRSR. And we have come up with this research guide on how we are doing it. You probably all might have seen a link to the sample document for this guide when you were registering for this webinar. However, this the entire document will be shared with our customers when we're engaging with them. Before we provide this service, we would be showing exactly what we're doing. So here I'll just quickly go through it, just give you an idea. You would see that we are giving a much more in-depth idea about all the principles and applying it. How we apply it is we take the BRSR format of this current financial year. That is the updated format that we have got in July. And then what we do is we map the IR principles to each and every BRSR question. And it would look something like this. So this question has mapped these three principles. These three principles are applicable here. And so on. Like you could, just see that like, for example, if we want to, go a little more in depth and understand this. So this question is talking about the complaints and grievances on any principle under the NGRBC. We have mapped stakeholder relationships, mainly because this is pertaining to it's a very stakeholder related question. We would map connectivity of information because I had pointed out earlier, there are employee details which are asked over here, a number of complaints filed, and there are other sections which asks for similar, numbers. You want to make sure that the information is connected. Similarly, for the customers also, a number of complaints filed in this financial year. And there is a Principle 9 question which asks for a detailed breakup of these complaints filed. You want to make sure that you're consistent and comparable. You want to have the information, filled in for the previous financial year, the current financial year, reliability and completeness. Make sure that everything that you're filling in, you have, sufficient data to back you up on that. So, basically, it's like mapping every question of the BRSR to the IR principles. So you want to make sure that you're satisfying them while you're filling up this report. So I'll just quickly go through it. I just want to show you a couple of charts at the very end. Yeah. So here you can see we have, like I mentioned, more than 600 touch points. And this is a pie chart which represents how many of these IR principles touch points are present in the entire BRSR. It's fairly evenly distributed, except probably the reliability and completeness, maybe conciseness, which has more touch points, you would say, mainly because you would want to make sure that the answers are completely, reliable, complete, all those things. We also have here a representation of, this is more in terms of the BRSR sections. So section A, section B, principle 1, 2, 3 until 9, how many of the IR principles are mapped to section A, how many are mapped to section B, and how many of, I mean to say, like the red ones represent the strategic focus and orientation, and so on and so forth. And you will see that for principle 6, the maximum number of touch points are present, as is obvious, mainly because of the number of data points which are collected in principle 6, especially pertaining to the E pillar. So I want to also just quickly go over the gap assessment document. So I'm just, this is a continuation of the sneak peek, that we had provided in the last Tuesday's webinar, where we were talking about the gap assessment service that we provide. And we had also shown you the table of contents, which tells you what it is that we will provide to you after we do the service, the deliverables. We give an assessment based on the SMAT. We give you a performance on the separate E, S, and G pillars. You get to compare yourself with your industry peers. You see your assurance readiness against the BRSR core, and also you see your reporting maturity against the IR principles. I just want to go in a little more depth in this section. This is a sample report, just prepared for as a deliverable. You get to see something like a heptagon over here, which represents what is the percentage that you have achieved on this principle A, on this principle B, C, D, and so forth. You will see probably you've scored the highest on materiality, and probably you might want to work more on reliability and completeness because you're scored only 60%. So you get to see a representation based on, like what I was showing you, the research guide. We have created a tool that will score your BRSR report against the IR principles and give you such a heptagon. It will also give you further zoomed in information. Like, for example, you see here, this is principle A. It is talking about how well have you done in section A, section B, section C, principle 1, essential, principle 1, leadership. How well have you done against this principle? And you read that by looking at this blue bar and the orange bar. Now, the blue bar represents what is the maximum possible number that you can achieve for your industry. This is customized to your specific industry. And the orange bar will represent how well have you done in your report against this blue bar. So you can see here that this is, done well. This probably has room for improvement. That's section B. You can see that possibly this is principle 2, essential indicators. This is something that you may want to look into, why you have not scored well in that. And so you can see for every principle, you can evaluate yourself how well you're doing by looking at these charts. This is arrived at by using our tool. This is the gap assessment deliverable, and we also have a plan of action document which has to be read in tandem with the gap assessment document. So the gap assessment document is a very quantitative analysis. It gives you numbers. Like it had given you, 75% overall is the score that you had achieved on the IR. But what can you do to improve it? What can you do to bridge that gap? So this deliverable will give you the areas to focus for the maturity, areas to focus for getting your core audit more ready, areas to focus for your IR alignment, and what you can do better. And it gives you, like, what we do is we come up with observation themes for every principle. So there are buckets which are classified, and within a principle, there may be reasons for not meeting that principle. And these are the themes that we classify them. And we, like, for example, we have given over here for connectivity of information. There are observation themes like connectivity between questions is missing. And I'm referring back to this question in section A, question 19, which is about the participation, inclusion, representation of women. If you remember, how it was mentioned as a total of 8 and women were 2. However, when it came to a later question about details of remuneration, the number of BOD males was 2 and females was 1. So we will call out exactly what it is. We would be providing the question numbers over here and our observations as well. So this is divided into the bucket of connectivity between questions, connectivity within the question. This was again to do with sustainable sourcing. What was the percentage of inputs which were sourced sustainably? We say the answer was yes, wherever feasible. However, when it came to the percentage, it was mentioned that it was done only for the infrastructure, and the inputs for production and processes is not applicable. Without any details of what is the actual percentage or when it is that they will be working on that. Or connectivity between 2 time periods. For example, I think there was a question related to water discharge. Data was provided only for 1 financial year. So these are different buckets that we would put it into, and we would be providing it for all the principals. We would be doing a detailed gap assessment of the report. So this is just like a quick summary. We just wanted to show you in case anybody has any further questions, they want to discuss this in greater detail, please do reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk to you about it. And with that, I think I'm at the end of this discussion, and I would like to just let you all know that next week we're having a really unique webinar from a person from XBRL. This person is a very senior person in XBRL, and she will be providing industry level insights derived from analytics, XBRL and analytics, which is something I think most of us would not be able to get access to very easily. So please do, join in for the next Tuesday's webinar. And with that, I know we still have a few more minutes left. Stuti, if there are any other questions, we can take it up, or we could close a few minutes early.
Yeah, sure, Manisha. I think we can take up one more question. So there's a question by Shikumar, and the question is, does SEBI expect alignment with IR principles, or are you suggesting that the application of the IR principles is a good practice for assurance obligations?
Yes, Shri Kumar. So the SEBI does not mandate alignment with IR principles. This is just something that we believe is one is like aligning with global best practices, because your company might be having stakeholders who are not residing just in India. They might be studying reports, studying integrated reports, and when they see your BRSR, which is aligned with integrated reporting, it might make it very easy for them to understand. It might make it much more credible for them, and so it might be beneficial to your company to align. This is not a mandatory requirement. However, as consultants, when we are preparing BRSR reports for our customers, we want to make sure that it is in alignment with the IR principles. One is for their own stakeholders, and 2 is for them to get through their third-party audit in as smooth a way as possible. So these are the 2 reasons why we strongly suggest aligning with the IR principles.
Okay. I think with that we are done. Mehul, yes, we will certainly share with you the recordings of the session once we are done with all 4 webinars. So we will send them across to you, and we'll also upload them on our YouTube channel, so you can always access them from there.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much.